welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Health Issues. I'm your host, Chris Sylvain, and we are so thoroughly excited today. We have an awesome guest. He's been on before and actually one of the most powerful videos that we have. So we would like to welcome the Chief Defender of the Orleans Parish Public Defender's Office, Chief Defender Derwyn Bunton. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, always excited to have you. You guys are in a tough struggle about right now. Tell us about what's going on.
Well, right now, I think really it's been a number of years now when we've been advocating for accountability and fairness in our criminal justice system. And part of that means we need the resources necessary to hold the system accountable, protect the innocent, make sure proceedings are fair, make sure we're protecting our clients' constitutional rights, helping our clients and our clients' communities get on better paths. And we've been arguing and arguing and arguing. And through that, we've been taking cuts in our resources over the last 5 years. And we're finally at a point where we can only do what we can do. So we're in a place now where we're going to have to start saying no to some cases because there's just too many of them for us to be able to do a job within the Constitution and ethically in accordance to the standards of ethics and the Constitution. So that's where we're at right now.
I think it's an obvious point that at a point where as the services go below what's the minimum necessary, I don't see you having a choice. Am I correct?
No, and that's exactly right. I always talk about the triangle of defense. On one side, we've got the Constitution. On one side, we've got professional ethics. And on another side, we have standards, which are derived from both of those. And our cases have to fit inside that triangle. And to the extent that they don't, we can't take them. We can't handle them, right, because we put the integrity of the system at risk. And more importantly for us, we put our clients at risk. There was an opinion piece by the head of the Innocence Project recently, and they were talking about how one of the Bunny Friends suspects had access to a lawyer and an investigator and was able to get information that cleared him. He wasn't even here when the shooting happened. Now, that sort of thing would not have happened as fast in our office today as it might have happened a few years ago before we started taking these cuts. And the problem with that is a lot of video evidence gets overwritten, gets thrown out, gets erased. And so we could very well get a client who would say, hey, I wasn't there, I was in Houston, I was in this store. And by the time that investigation request was acted upon, that information could be erased, it could be gone. And then what you have is the girlfriend and mother's word in court. And in my opinion, courts and a lot of juries are going to see that as self-serving and not give it any credit. And you've got somebody, all of a sudden, you've got, as an individual, a situation where you're fighting for your freedom and you're innocent. And you lost an opportunity to absolutely prove it. And that's problematic. And that's why these standards are in place. That's why we have our Constitution. That's why we have ethics. And we're going to help the people we can with the resources we're given.
Okay, now let's take this. I'm just naive. I have to admit that I'm naive. But doesn't the DA fit in that triangle? I mean, doesn't he have that group? Now, we don't have to personalize it, that team in any city, but have professional ethics to say that if there's such a video and he has the resources, shouldn't he want to spend his resources to go get that video?
And that's why it is so important that our office maintains the resources it needs to hold the system accountable. The role of the district attorney and of the police department, of law enforcement and prosecution, is to catch the bad guy, quote unquote. And so they're oriented toward conviction. That's why the investigation pointed to Mr. Allen, the police arrested him, and that's why the district attorneys were ready to charge, right? It's because it's an overall orientation. That's why we all have our role in the system. And it is that mix of roles that the architects of our system believed would get you to the proper result, to get you out of jail if you're innocent, to get you home to your family. And right now what we have is a breakdown in that. You've got folks oriented toward conviction, oriented toward capture, and minimized is our role in the system, and that is to hold those two pieces accountable and to show and to investigate, to make sure that you have the right person for the right crime for the right amount of time. And right now we are failing that in our system. And sure, a district attorney shouldn't be convicting innocent people,
Right.
but it is almost inevitable given their role and orientation, especially when the public defender's office doesn't have the resources to stand up and test the state's case.
Well, yeah, I am naive because I would think that it's almost as if you have a fight and you got a 300-pound guy and he's fighting against a 95-pound guy, and the 300-pound guy, you know, if he had ethics, he would say, well, I'm not going to engage in this fight. This is not a fair fight. I mean, wait a minute, where's the referee? The referee should say, wait, no, we can't allow this fight. And so if the DA is full of resources and the public defender's office has no resources, I mean, these clients get beat up every day.
Yeah. And there are no referees. From when you look at our system, the courts are very sort of motivated by moving their dockets. And so when you have a district attorney's office that has 90 attorneys versus a public defender's office that has 50, a district attorney with 30 investigators to a public defender's office that has 8, to a district attorney's office who has 6 or more employees who make more than the chief public defender on the other side, who have retirement, who get their rent paid, all this sort of stuff. You would think that the referees in the system would say, okay, let's slow down. We have to give Mr. Bunton more time. We have to provide more safeguards. We have to make sure all of these things are done and done correctly. But our system is absolutely absent. All that is absent in our system. I think we teach from a very young age our kids, and we've learned from our parents what fairness is, what fairness looks like. Well, I know what fairness is. You know what fairness is. This don't look like fairness, and we need to do something about it.
Well, it seems to be constitutionally enshrined, set within the budgetary process, the way the state and the judicial system is operating, whereas the district attorney's office, they're literally not held accountable for just basic human ethics. If there was not a public defender's office, the district attorney, to me, as a human responsibility, and the police department, as if that other triangle, each part of that triangle in humanity, and I will say this, it cannot have to depend upon the other part of the triangle.
Well, I think our system, certainly our funding system by design, is meant to be erratic. It's meant to hinder our ability. We have the only user-pay criminal justice system in the country. It's inadequate, it's unreliable, it's unstable, and particularly for us. And because we depend on fines and fees to run our system, a system that is aimed at the poorest and most vulnerable, then you can expect to have shortfalls in your revenue and your resources and ability to do that. And we, as a public defender office, depend on that to a greater degree than the other parts of the system. And when you have that, you're going to have problems. You're going to have an office that simply cannot handle the workload, and we've come to that point now.
So in some boardroom somewhere, this thing was designed to do what it's doing. For you to beg for money and for somebody else to tell you no, and for the guy to go to jail.
Well, on paper, right? On paper, it's designed to do any of a number of things. One, force us to be in these situations where we're constantly looking for resources, constantly wondering whether we're going to be able to represent people in accordance with the law. Or it's designed for people who will do this work and just shut up don't mind the injustice, don't mind the unfairness. It doesn't matter to you, right? So there's not a whole lot of alternative ways to really view this when you put everything up against itself. When you shine the light of day on our system, it is unfair, it is unstable, it is inadequate, and public defenders need to be there to be a part of holding the system accountable, to protect the constitutional rights. That was ingrained in this country before there was even a constitution. 245 years ago, in the Boston Massacre, those soldiers who were quartered there, it was an occupying force by a king overseas, shot and killed 5 people in a civil unrest. Nobody would take their case but one lawyer. That one lawyer litigated and acquitted 3 of the 5. The other 2 were charged with lesser offenses. They all escaped the death penalty, which is what they started facing. That first lawyer 245 years ago was John Adams, the 2nd president of the United States. And so this is a deeply ingrained principle in our society. You get protection against the government when the government comes to get you. And we have not been provided the resources to protect our clients and our communities under these circumstances in accordance with our role in the system.
Well, so is it the state legislature itself, or is it the council and the mayor who's responsible?
Well, it's certainly I believe it's a community responsibility and community writ large. What we need right now is the state to take action, because the landscape that is built right now is created, maintained by the state. This whole user pay system is a series of state statutes, fines and fees that we need to take a look at and reform. The mechanisms by which we're all funded were started at the state level. And locally, I believe our community has really supported us over time, especially as it has been the state that over the last 5 years has reduced our funding by nearly $6 million over the last 5 years. And we've seen leadership in our city council and with our mayor and with our community partners standing up to help with some of that. But what we need now is we need fundamental reform in how we provide resources to public defense in our criminal justice system, and we need it yesterday.
Yeah, literally. We have a new governor and so forth, but obviously the state legislature and the state legislators right here in this city should be leading the way, and so the community should be pressing each and every one of them with emails and phone calls and doing everything possible. It just so happens, though, that the people who are most vulnerable are least able to do the press.
Yeah. What we need people with talent, access, resources, and we've had some great support from folks who fit that description at all levels supporting us. But we need folks to double down and really pressure decision makers. Folks who can make a change need to come on in, sit down, roll up their sleeves, and make some changes, because this is not fair. And I think communities around the country are starting to realize and are rising up against unfair criminal justice systems and practices, from policing to prosecution to rehabilitation and reentry. You've got nationally President Obama releasing people on these drug offenses, lower level offenses. You've got people thinking about how do we make it harder for people to get in jail, not easier. And I think here in Louisiana, with our leadership, we need to start doubling down and doing that same thing here. And part of that includes improving our public defender system, certainly a system that has been maligned over the years, that we've worked real hard to bring up the reputation of our office and to fight cuts successively over the last 5 years. We finally just reached this point where we can't do more than we can do.
Well, all right, I guess it's hard to talk about it without the broader climate internationally, but definitely in the United States. And we don't have to politicize it, but the move to the right-wing law and order, this is a wave almost. It's like a tsunami. And so obviously that has to play a part in the ability to access funds and change the structure, where you have so many folk now is going back to the law and order, lock them up. We could care less. We're sick of them. They shouldn't be here anyway. Type of, they can't work. We don't have anything to do with them. I mean, the broader climate has to affect the day-to-day of what's going on with a little Johnny who should have gotten probation but ends up getting 20 years.
Right. No, and I think there is a national momentum right now to take a look, a good, hard, smart, intelligent look at our criminal justice system and what it has become over these past few decades. It is enormous, it is onerous, it is oppressive, and built on some of the worst aspects of our nature as human beings. And I think folks are starting to look at it now and beginning to think, hey, let's try not to do that. Can we get something different? What we have done in the United States and in Louisiana in particular, we've become very good at creating a system of capture, conviction, and incarceration, irregardless of anything else. And people have built their careers on making it as easy as possible to incarcerate as many people as possible. And that has hit communities of color and poor communities disproportionately hard. And if you study Louisiana, a history of Louisiana's criminal justice system, it is a roadmap to being the largest incarcerator in the world. Criminalize as much conduct as you can and do it at a felony level. Make sure everybody who's arrested goes to jail and stays there for a good while. Aiming at the poor, the dispossessed, the folks of color. Those folks, they don't have the wherewithal to fight you as hard as some other parts of our communities might be able to fight you. And then disarm your public defender's office, because then all you have is either a pro forma stop to the jail or a speed bump to the jail, as opposed to someone really holding the system accountable. And if you follow that roadmap, you get Louisiana. You get the largest incarcerator in the world. You get the largest exonerator in the world. We lead the country in wrongful convictions. And you get public defenders' offices who are constantly trying to figure out how to do more with less, and finally have to restrict their services to stay within the bounds of the Constitution and their own professional ethics. And that's the situation we're looking at right now. But we can and should do better. We've got leadership here in this city, I think, who can do better. I think we've got leadership in Baton Rouge, if they pay attention, who can do better. You've got folks on all sides of this now thinking we need to shrink our system. We need to have fewer people in jail.
Well, I have a problem, though. Okay. It's so clear, you've said, you've been speaking all around. It's so clear, and people will wake up. The first thing, though, is that you're the most powerful voice that I know going against mass incarceration. All right, now, bar none, most knowledgeable to literally lead this charge. All right, and I appreciate that. We're definitely honored, that you're part of that. But I think it says itself, it becomes an indictment on the other side, that every politician is not standing toe-to-toe where these laws are not already written, they're not right there at the legislator's desk, that we don't have the buses going to Baton Rouge, we don't have the people voting against it identified, so we'll know to never vote for them again in life, and none of our family. You know what I mean? It's this is like, in other words, it needs to be an army. It shouldn't have even gotten to this point. Right. But where are the other? I know they're supporting, but in other words, and again, if we're going to fight a 300-pound guy, it's got to be an army of folk where the bill should already be written that people need to be voting for that's going to correct this thing, you know. You know, you guys, again, y'all are trying to try cases. Y'all have a lot to do.
Right.
I mean, who's the foundation, you know, accepting all this money? These so-called friends of ours, then what are they doing?
Well, I think that's a difficult question to answer in terms of certainly that last piece, where, what are they doing, who's accepting the money. I can say this, that there is certainly a growing number of people supporting reform and reform on our behalf. And it's all, and like the national debate, it's a lot of unlikely allies. You know, there are folks who do large, we've been supported by the Press-Kabakoffs in the city who do who you would never think are involved in criminal justice reform. They've been supporting us in what we've been trying to do. You've got former kings of Rex who've come to visit our office and said, how can we help? This is a tragedy. You've got many other civic organizations, neighborhood groups, neighborhood associations who are like, this is not fair. You know, what do we do? What can we do? And who are the slowest to act right now are decision makers, folks who can cast a vote, folks who can draft the bill, folks who can change this. You know, actually now with community support to do so. The trick is we've got to get this pulled together from around the state. Folks in Baton Rouge love to say, oh, that's New Orleans. That's a New Orleans problem. But now they can't say that because we've got New Orleans who has service restrictions. St. Bernard is about to close. Orleans Parish, their public defender's office is going into restrictions. They've lost a third of their staff. You've got Lafayette that just filed in service restrictions. You've got Baton Rouge who's in service. You've got Shreveport who's in. This system is a statewide system designed wrong, designed unfair. And now you've got voices finally coming out, you know, folks here in New Orleans who are finally coming out like, hey, this isn't fair. And as a matter of fact, it was never fair. And so there's something that needs to be done. So I feel like we're a little late, but I feel like momentum is building, and what we need is decision makers to pay attention and do something to change this. Because I also have to say, when I look at things nationally, if we don't do it ourselves, it's going to be litigation that does it. Like if we don't make the decision to craft the solutions to this, it will be crafted for us, and we'll be looking at managing another consent decree here in New Orleans and really around the state when it comes to this. And I believe we are smart enough, we are good enough folk in Louisiana and New Orleans to solve this problem and solve it ourselves without being forced to do it, without being scared to do it. In a way that's lasting and is fair, and right now it's just time, and it's time and strength and courage and wisdom and folks willing to use all of that in solving this problem. Okay,
but it's time, and you've set the time that you're not going to take any more cases.
Right.
So, so we need the names of those that's placing the system this way. I guess your office can't be a political action committee, so somebody else has to be the one where it can throw up a website and give us the names of the legislators and put the billboards up, you know what I mean, and accept the funds to go and make this political push. Am I right? How does that need? Because obviously we need a group that's putting billboards up and all on the news and doing press releases and going at these legislators and telling them we'll never vote for you again unless you get this thing together.
Well, I think that part of building that momentum and building that sort of coalition of people is going to, once we are more and better organized that way, I think we'll have some of those abilities. And they may be housed in our office, they may be housed in other sister organizations. There's, for example, the Louisiana Campaign for Equal Justice, which has been doing work statewide on public education in terms of public defense around the state. Maybe some people who can do that as well. We have members of our board at the state level, our public defender board, who I know are ready to be evangelical on things like that. And so I believe it's just a matter of getting our ducks in a row and then finding the folks who have the sort of courage to stand up and do it, and drawing from the strength of our community here and sort of building strength in communities elsewhere to get it done. Because like I said, there's some real unlikely allies, and part of this is everybody recognizes that you can only prosecute as fast as you can defend. That is part of our it's one of the original 10 amendments to the Constitution. Like, it's the 6th Amendment, right? It's not even the last amendment. It wasn't even the last one they thought about, right? And so this is something that is heavily ingrained in people. People understand this as being not equal, not fair. This is not equal justice. And I also have to raise, there's people who say, well, you want a Cadillac system. You want a Cadillac public defender's office.
Yeah, that's minimal.
Well,
I want to live jail. These guys about to die. They're going to be in jail forever.
Well, the thing is,
we're in mass incarceration.
We're in mass incarceration. I think folks miss that. Anytime somebody raises that, I would argue that they have already acquiesced in what is an unjust, unequal system, because there simply is no such thing as Cadillac justice. There's justice and there's injustice. And what we want is justice in our system. We want fairness in our system. There's no justice and then Toyota justice and then Acura justice and then that's when someone's doing that, you understand that is someone who doesn't understand poor folks, doesn't understand classism, doesn't understand the horrible history, the horrible racist history of a lot of the pieces of our criminal justice system. The idea, I want people to identify to me what is the Cadillac piece of what I want to do. Because what I want to do is make sure no innocent person goes to jail, right? I want to make sure that members of my community and our clients' community have a fair shot in court and have one that's as good as any lawyer who could be retained. I want to be able to investigate my cases, file motions, research, help among that, what is Cadillac? Because that seems to me to be just indicators of what a just and fair system is.
Well, and again, in the environment, in the historical environment, but in an environment of mass incarceration, Houston, we have a problem here. I mean, so it's not as if we're not talking about something that's a problem, but there are, I call it, enemies to justice. Historically, America have had enemies to justice, and whether they're saying they're doing it knowingly or unknowingly, those who cannot understand justice and their hand is in a pot, they become enemies to justice.
No, and I joke about it a lot of time in trainings. When you're managing change, especially big change, there's always a section of training I talk about, and I call it the Empire Strikes Back. Because anytime you want to have a paradigm shift, anytime you want to change people's orientation so that they look at themselves or their systems differently, you're going to get resistance, because there's power and investment in the way things are or were. And even now, when we talk about service restrictions, losing staff, not having the resources, I've got a judge who appointed me to a case that our statute says we're not even supposed to handle, and is forcing me to litigate on that case. I've been on the case now more than 3 months, right? I was in court today on that same case. It seems remarkable to me that in light of our resource deficits, which are widely published and uncontroverted, by the way, that you would assign me to a case that would be so labor intensive when I'm trying to lead my office through this. Like, that is the definition of the Empire Strikes Back. There's nothing other than, no other way to describe that. And you have to have a plan for meeting those concerns.
Hey, look, we can go on, but look, understand that we have a fight to do. Do your best and don't ever stop. We shouldn't be having these arguments. Thank you.